The massive alien ship appeared above Earth's orbital station without warning. It was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its dark metal surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. Captain Maria Santos watched from the station's command center as smaller ships emerged from the giant vessel like insects from a hive. "They're requesting permission to dock," reported Lieutenant Kim, his voice tight with tension. Their message is in perfect English. President Elena Vasquez had arrived on the station just hours earlier. She stood beside Captain Santos, her dark eyes fixed on the alien fleet. "Grant them permission, but keep all weapons ready." The alien delegation that entered the station's main hall was unlike anything humans had imagined. The leader was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and forearms that moved with fluid grace. Its large black eyes seemed to see everything at once. Behind it walked 6 other creatures, each from a different species, each more strange than the last. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony," the blue-skinned alien said. Its voice came from a small device on its chest, translating its words into perfect English. "I speak for the Galactic Council, the governing body of 847 civilized species." President Vasquez stepped forward. She was a small woman compared to the towering aliens, but she showed no fear. "Welcome to human space, Ambassador. I am Elena Vasquez, President of the United Earth Government." Zethkar's forearms spread wide in what might have been surprise. "You speak as if you have authority here." "How interesting. We have come to inform you of new regulations concerning your species." The alien pulled out a crystal device that projected a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems glowed in different colors. Red dots marked human colonies. "Your species has spread to 200 star systems in just 3 centuries, Zethkar continued. "This is highly irregular. Most species require 10,000 years to achieve such expansion, and only after proving their wisdom and stability." Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief scientist, frowned. "We developed faster-than-light travel through careful research and testing. Our expansion has been peaceful." One of the other aliens, a creature covered in what looked like living crystals, made a sound like breaking glass. Zethkar nodded. "Counselor Vexethal points out that your methods were reckless. You achieved FTL travel through dangerous experiments that could have destroyed your entire solar system. This proves humans are too primitive and violent for unsupervised expansion." "Violent?" President Vasquez asked. "We haven't attacked anyone." "Your history speaks for itself," Zethkar replied. The crystal device now showed images of human wars, battles, and conflicts from throughout history. "You have fought constantly among yourselves. You have destroyed entire cities. You consume resources without thought for the future. You are exactly the kind of species the Galactic Council was created to control." General Marcus Webb, head of Earth's military, stepped closer. "Control? What exactly are you saying?" Zethkar's black eyes focused on him. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding humanity. You will surrender 90% of your colonies immediately. All remaining human settlements will accept Galactic Council oversight. You will pay tribute of 50% of your resources and technology each year. Your military will be disbanded except for local police forces. Your scientists will work under Council supervision." The human delegation exchanged shocked glances. Dr. Chen was the first to speak. "That's impossible. Those colonies have millions of people. They're our homes. The Council is generous," Zethkar said. "Previous species who refused our guidance were eliminated entirely. You are being offered the chance to survive and learn proper civilization under our protection." President Vasquez felt her hands clench into fists, but she kept her voice calm. "And if we refuse?" The crystal-covered alien made more breaking glass sounds. Zethkar translated. "Counselor Vexthul says refusal is not possible. The punishment fleet is already assembled. It consists of 10,000 warships, each more powerful than your entire space force. No species has ever survived an encounter with the punishment fleet." "How many species have you given this choice to?" General Webb asked. 412, Zethkar answered without hesitation. 398 accepted Council guidance immediately. 14 chose to resist. The alien paused. None of the 14 still exist. The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. The aliens waited patiently while the humans absorbed this information. Finally, President Vasquez spoke. "You're asking us to give up our freedom?" "Freedom is a primitive concept," Zethkar explained. "The Council provides order, stability, and peace. Individual desires must give way to the greater good of galactic civilization. Who decides what the greater good is? Dr. Chen asked. The Council, of course. We have maintained galactic peace for over 2,000 years. We have prevented wars, managed resources, and guided the development of hundreds of species. This is the natural order. President Vasquez looked at each member of her team. General Webb's jaw was tight with anger. Dr. Chen looked like she was trying to solve an impossible equation. Captain Santos stared at the alien fleet through the viewports. How long do we have to decide? Vasquez asked. The Council is patient, Zethkar said. You have one of your standard days to announce your acceptance. The punishment fleet will arrive in your system in 3 days to begin the transition process. And there's no room for negotiation? No compromise? The alien seemed confused by the question. Zethkar's forearms moved in patterns that might have been gestures. The Council's decision is final. Compromise suggests that both sides have valid positions. The Council's position is based on thousands of years of experience and wisdom. Your position is based on primitive emotions and ignorance. There is nothing to negotiate. President Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, about the colonists on Mars and Europa, about the children being born on worlds dozens of light years away. She thought about humanity's long struggle from caves to starships, about every war fought for freedom, every life sacrificed for the right to choose their own destiny. Ambassador Zethkar, she said finally, I want to make sure I understand correctly. You're demanding that humanity surrender most of our worlds except alien rulers, and pay tribute for the privilege of existing under your control. That is correct. And if we refuse, you'll send a fleet to destroy us. The punishment fleet has never failed. President Vasquez nodded slowly. Then let me give you our answer now so there's no confusion. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly into Zethkar's black eyes. Humanity does not bargain with bullies. We decline your offer. The silence that followed was complete. The aliens stood frozen, as if they couldn't process what they had just heard. Finally, Zethkar's translation device crackled to life. I believe there was an error in translation. Did you say you refused the Council's generous terms? That's exactly what I said, Vasquez replied. We choose freedom over slavery, even if it costs us everything. For the first time since they arrived, the aliens showed emotion. Several of them stepped backward. The crystal-covered alien made sounds like an entire chandelier crashing to the floor. Zethkar's forearms moved frantically. This is impossible, the ambassador said. No species refuses the Council. It is not rational. It is not logical. You will all die. Maybe, President Vasquez said. But we'll die as free humans, not as galactic slaves. Zethkar's head tilted to one side. Your species is even more primitive than we believed. Very well. The punishment fleet will arrive as scheduled. When your colonies burn and your homeworld lies in ruins, remember that you chose this fate. The aliens left without another word, their footsteps echoing in the silent corridor. President Vasquez watched their ship disappear into the void, then turned to her advisors. Well, she said quietly, I suppose we'd better prepare for war. War Marshal Thexrin stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Order, watching the human star system grow larger on the main display. Behind his ship stretched the punishment fleet, 10,000 vessels that had never known defeat. The sight should have filled him with confidence, but something felt wrong. Marshal, reported his intelligence officer, a spider-like creature with 8 glowing eyes. The humans are broadcasting across all frequencies. They're not requesting mercy or offering surrender. What are they saying? Thexrin asked, his scaled hands gripping the command rail. They appear to be coordinating. Military units, civilian populations, even their children are receiving instructions. It's unlike anything in our records, Thexrin frowned. Every species followed the same pattern when facing the punishment fleet. First came panic, then desperate attempts to negotiate, finally surrender before the first shot was fired. Humans seemed to be skipping straight to something else entirely. The first target was Kepler 442b, a human agricultural colony with 2 million inhabitants. The plan was simple: destroy their orbital defenses, demand surrender, then move to the next system. A few demonstrations of Council power would break human resistance completely. But when the fleet arrived at Kepler 442b, they found something impossible. The planet was empty. Where are the colonists? Thexrin demanded. His tactical officer, a blue-skinned Veltar, studied the readings. Unknown, Marshal. Life support systems are still running in all cities, but no life signs detected. Wait, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The answer came in the form of explosions. Hidden among the asteroids, disguised as space debris, hundreds of human ships attacked simultaneously. They were tiny compared to Council vessels, barely large enough for a crew of 5, but they moved with deadly purpose. How did they hide so many ships? The intelligence officer clicked nervously. The human vessels swarmed around the Council fleet like angry insects. Instead of engaging in proper ship-to-ship combat, they used tactics no civilized species would consider. Some rammed directly into Council ships, their crews dying in nuclear fireballs that damaged vessels worth more than entire planets. Others launched primitive nuclear missiles, then self-destructed to prevent capture. "This is madness," Thexron said, watching his tactical display. "They're killing themselves." But the madness was effective. The human pilots seemed to know exactly where to hit each Council ship for maximum damage. They targeted weapon systems, life support, and command centers with precision that suggested they had studied Council technology extensively. The worst part was the communications. Instead of screams or pleas for mercy, the human channels carried singing. War songs, battle hymns, and phrases that translated poorly but seemed to inspire rather than terrify. "Remember the Alamo," one human pilot shouted before ramming a Council cruiser. "Live free or die," screamed another as her ship exploded against a command vessel. "For Earth and freedom," came the final transmission from a human squadron that took out an entire Council battle group through coordinated suicide attacks. Within 6 hours, the punishment fleet had lost 300 ships. Not destroyed in glorious battle, but torn apart by suicidal tactics that made no logical sense. The humans had lost every ship they sent, but they acted like they had won a great victory. Thexron ordered a retreat to regroup, but the humans weren't finished. As the Council fleet withdrew, long-range sensors detected massive explosions on Kepler 442b itself. The humans had booby-trapped their entire colony. They destroyed their own cities, the tactical officer reported in disbelief. Farms, factories, spaceports, everything. They left nothing for us to capture. "Where did the colonists go?" Thexron asked. The answer came from intercepted human communications. The 2 million colonists had been evacuated to other systems, taking their most valuable equipment and knowledge with them. They had abandoned their homes rather than let the Council have them. But the real shock came when the fleet reached the next target system. The humans were waiting for them again, and this time they had learned from the first battle. Their attack ships carried better weapons, their tactics were more sophisticated, and their coordination was perfect. How are they adapting so quickly? The intelligence officer wondered. Most species take decades to modify their military doctrine. The answer was in the human broadcasts that filled every communication channel. Instead of keeping their strategies secret, the humans shared everything. Battle reports, tactical analyses, weapon modifications, all transmitted openly across their entire civilization. "We learn from every engagement," said Admiral Sarah Chen in a broadcast from Earth. "Every ship we lose teaches us how to build better ones. Every tactic the Council uses gets shared with every human commander. We're not just fighting a war, we're evolving." This was unprecedented in galactic history. No species had ever treated warfare as a learning experience. The Council's standard strategy relied on overwhelming force creating immediate surrender, but humans seemed to view each defeat as valuable data for the next battle. The third engagement was a disaster for the Council. Human ships appeared from impossible angles using gravity wells and solar radiation to mask their approach. They had somehow weaponized asteroids, turning entire asteroid belts into massive shotgun blasts that shredded Council formations. "They're using their star as a weapon," the tactical officer reported in amazement. "They're channeling solar flares through magnetic fields to create directed energy bursts. Even worse, human tactics were spreading beyond military applications. Civilian populations were proving impossible to control. When Council forces landed on human worlds, they found cities rigged with explosives, populations that melted away into hidden tunnels, and constant guerrilla attacks that came from everywhere and nowhere. "We control nothing," Thexron admitted in his private log. "We can destroy human cities, but we cannot hold them. We can defeat human fleets, but new ones appear faster than we can count. This species fights like no other in recorded history." The breaking point came when human terrorist cells began appearing behind Council lines. Somehow, human infiltrators had reached Council support bases, supply depots, and even military headquarters. They struck without warning, disappeared without trace, and left behind messages that chilled Thexerin to his core. "You came to our homes," read one message left after humans destroyed a Council ammunition depot. "Now we come to yours. The galaxy is bigger than you think, and freedom spreads faster than fear." The humans had done something impossible. They had gone on the offensive while losing every major battle. Their fleets were destroyed, their colonies evacuated or burned, their military outnumbered 1,000 to 1. By every measure, they were losing the war. So why did it feel like the Council was losing? The answer came in reports from across the galaxy. Other species were watching the human broadcasts, seeing impossible victories won through sacrifice and determination. The Veltar mining colonies were reporting work slowdowns. The aquatic Merdani had stopped responding to Council communications. Even loyal species were asking uncomfortable questions about Council authority. "The humans are broadcasting their defeats as victories," the intelligence officer reported. "They show their ships being destroyed, their colonies burning, their people dying, and somehow this inspires rather than discourages them." Thexerin studied the latest battle reports. The punishment fleet had lost 2,000 ships, but human resistance was stronger than ever. Worse, human technology was improving with each engagement. Their latest ships carried weapons that could penetrate Council shields, armor that absorbed Council energy blasts, and engines that outmaneuvered ships 5 times their size. "How long can they maintain this?" he asked his staff. "Unknown, Marshal," the tactical officer replied. "Their industrial capacity seems to be increasing rather than decreasing. They've converted their entire civilization to war production, and their decentralized manufacturing makes them nearly impossible to target effectively." Thexerin looked at the casualty reports again. The numbers were clear, humanity was doomed. But the humans themselves seemed unaware of this mathematical certainty. They kept fighting, kept learning, kept adapting as if defeat was impossible. "Send a message to the Council," he ordered finally. "Request additional reinforcements. All available reinforcements." "How many ships, Marshal?" Thexerin studied the display showing human space, where new defensive positions appeared daily and every star system had become a fortress. "All of them," he said quietly. "Send every ship we have." As the message went out across the galaxy, Thexerin wondered if the Council's greatest mistake had been underestimating not human strength, but human stubbornness. They had expected rational beings who would choose survival over principle. Instead, they had found something that defied all logic, a species that seemed to grow stronger with each defeat, more determined with each loss, more unified with each tragedy. For the first time in his long military career, War Marshal Thexerin began to suspect that the punishment fleet might not be enough. Deep in the Veltar mining complex on Zarian Prime, Kelmac paused in his digging to listen to the strange transmission crackling through his work helmet. The overseer wasn't nearby, so he dared to turn up the volume on the forbidden frequency. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of the Human Defense Force," the voice said in accented galactic standard. "Our fleet is about to engage Council forces at the Titan Nebula. We know we're outnumbered 50 to 1. We know most of us won't survive this battle, but we also know that freedom is worth any price." Kelmac's forearms trembled as he listened. No one spoke to the Council like this. No one had ever dared. The Veltar had been mining slaves for 8 centuries, ever since their homeworld fell to the punishment fleet. They had forgotten what defiance sounded like. "The Council wants us to surrender, because they say resistance is futile," Admiral Chen continued. "They're wrong. Every human ship they destroy teaches our builders how to make better ones. Every human pilot who dies takes Council vessels with them. We are not losing this war. We are learning how to win it." The transmission cut to battle footage. Kelmac watched in amazement as tiny human ships swarmed massive Council dreadnoughts. The humans fought with desperate creativity, using tactics no civilized species would consider. One ship used its damaged engines as a weapon, ramming a Council vessel while shouting, "Remember Earth." Another captain ejected his crew in escape pods, then flew his ship directly into a Council command center. But what shocked Kelmac most was what happened next. Instead of mourning their losses, the surviving humans celebrated their victories. They had destroyed Council ships worth more than entire star systems. They had proven that the mighty punishment fleet could bleed. "See?" Admiral Chen's voice returned. They told you the Council was invincible. They lied. They told you resistance was impossible. They lied about that too. If you're listening to this broadcast, know that freedom is possible. You just have to be willing to fight for it. The transmission ended with something Kelmac had never heard before, a human war song. The words didn't translate well, but the emotion came through clearly. Pride, determination, and hope. Hope most of all. What are you listening to? The overseer's voice cut through Kelmac's thoughts like a laser blade. Kelmac quickly switched his helmet to the approved frequency. Mining reports, Supervisor. Nothing else. The overseer, a tall hegemony officer with cold silver eyes, studied him suspiciously. Return to work. The Council requires increased mineral output to support the punishment fleet. Yes, Supervisor. But as Kelmac returned to his digging, the human admiral's words echoed in his mind. Freedom is possible. You just have to be willing to fight for it. That night in the worker dormitories, Kelmac did something that would have meant death just days earlier. He shared the human broadcast with his fellow miners. They refused. He whispered to his bunkmate Tovek. The humans actually refused the Council's ultimatum. That's impossible, Tovek replied. But his voice carried doubt rather than certainty. Listen for yourself. Kelmac shared his helmet's recording. Soon a dozen Veltar workers huddled around the tiny speaker, listening to Admiral Chen's defiant words. How are they still fighting? Asked Morlin, an older worker whose grandfather had been free. The Council has 10,000 ships. The same way our ancestors fought, Kelmac realized. By refusing to give up, by making the Council pay for every victory. The human broadcasts were spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. On Aquatica, the water-dwelling Merdani stopped their tribute shipments for the first time in 600 years. On Christos, the silicon-based Lithians began asking questions about Council authority that hadn't been spoken in millennia. Council Governor Zixtoth noticed the changes immediately. His weekly tribute collections were falling short. Productivity reports showed declining numbers across dozens of worlds. Most disturbing, intercepted communications revealed species using phrases that sounded familiar. Live, free or die, the Merdani had begun saying in their native language. Remember your ancestors, whispered the enslaved Veltar. Freedom is possible, echoed through the crystal cities of Lithia. The human concept of individual rights was spreading, like a virus through populations that had never considered such ideas. For 2,000 years, the Council had maintained order by convincing conquered species that resistance was futile and submission was survival. Now, the humans had proven both beliefs wrong. The first open rebellion came from the Zephyrian colonies. The bird-like Zephyrians had been model citizens for 4 centuries, their cloud cities producing atmospheric processors for the Council. Then they watched human pilots sacrifice themselves to destroy Council ships, and something ancient awakened in their genetic memory. We remember flight, announced Skymaster Aerith in a broadcast that reached every Zephyrian settlement. We remember when our ancestors soared free through endless skies. The Council has clipped our wings for 400 years. Today we take back the sky. The Zephyrian uprising began with their atmospheric processors. Instead of producing clean air for Council worlds, they started manufacturing toxic gases that poisoned Council military bases. When the punishment fleet arrived to restore order, they found something unprecedented. An entire species that had learned human tactics. Zephyrian cities could fly. When Council ships approached, the cloud cities simply moved, using weather patterns and electromagnetic fields to stay ahead of their pursuers. They struck at Council supply lines, then disappeared into storm systems where sensors couldn't track them. We cannot fight clouds, reported the frustrated Council commander. They attack from inside hurricanes and disappear into the upper atmosphere. Our weapons are useless against targets that are not solid. But the Zephyrians had learned more than tactics from the humans. They had learned the power of communication. Their broadcasts reached other flying species across the galaxy, sharing techniques for aerial guerrilla warfare and mobile resistance. The contagion spread faster than the Council could respond. The amphibious swamp dwellers of Marsh World began flooding Council installations. The tunneling mole people collapsed underground bases from below. Even the peaceful tree shepherds started using their forest worlds to hide rebel supply caches. Each species adapted human concepts to their own abilities. The ocean-dwelling Merdani created underwater cities that couldn't be detected from space. The desert nomads of Sandworld used their knowledge of extreme environments to make entire planets uninhabitable for Council forces. On the Council homeworld of Nexus Prime, emergency sessions ran day and night. The central chamber that had governed the galaxy for 2 millennia was now filled with panicked voices and desperate plans. 17 systems have declared independence this week, reported the intelligence chief. 43 others have stopped responding to our communications. The humans have somehow infected the entire galactic population with their madness. Counselor Prime Ythgol, leader of the Council for over 3 centuries, stared at the galactic map. Red lights marked systems in open rebellion. Yellow lights showed worlds with reduced compliance. Blue lights indicated loyal systems. There were far too many red lights, and the blue ones were shrinking daily. How is this possible? Ythgol demanded. The humans are losing every battle. Their fleets are destroyed, their colonies burned. By every measure, we are winning this war. The humans redefined victory, replied his chief analyst. They measure success not by territory held or battles won, but by ideas spread and spirits awakened. They have turned their defeats into recruitment tools. The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The Council had based their entire civilization on a single assumption: that intelligent species would choose survival over abstract concepts like freedom. The humans had proven this assumption wrong, and worse, they had taught other species to question it. What do the humans want? Asked Counselor Vexthul. Nothing we can give them, the analyst replied. They don't want tribute, territory, or treasure. They want something we cannot provide: the right to govern themselves. And now every species in the galaxy wants the same thing, Ythgol said quietly. The final blow came from an unexpected source. The archivists, an ancient species that maintained the Council's historical records, made an announcement that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. We have reviewed our records, stated Chief Archivist Memori in a galaxy-wide broadcast. The Council claims to have brought peace and stability to the galaxy. This is false. Our archives show that before the Council's rise, most species governed themselves successfully for thousands of years. Wars were local and brief. Resources were managed sustainably. Technological advancement was rapid and beneficial. The revelation continued. The Council did not create galactic civilization. They conquered it. They did not bring peace. They imposed submission. The humans have reminded us what we were before we became slaves. Across the galaxy, species that had forgotten their own histories began to remember. The Veltar recalled their democracy. The Merdani remembered their ocean republics. The Zephyrians spoke of the wind councils that had guided their ancestors. Each memory was a nail in the Council's coffin. On Earth, President Vasquez received daily reports of new rebellions and declarations of independence. Her advisor, Dr. Chen Ke. The emergency klaxons blared through the Council's command center on Nexus Prime as another red warning light appeared on the galactic map. Counselor Prime Ythgol stared at the display with growing horror. What had started as a human rebellion was now a cascade failure that threatened the entire galactic order. Report, he ordered, his voice cracking with strain. Intelligence Chief Morgath shuffled through data tablets with trembling appendages. The Centauri Collective just declared independence. That's 87 systems in the past week. The Crystal Consortium has stopped all tribute payments. The Hive worlds are refusing to accept new Council administrators. What about our loyal systems? Down to less than 200, Counselor Prime, and even those are showing signs of unrest. Ythgol collapsed into his command chair. In just 6 months, the mighty Galactic Council had lost control of more than half their territory. The impossible was happening. Species that had been obedient for centuries were suddenly demanding rights, representation, and autonomy. The worst part was the communications. Every day brought new intercepted messages that showed how far the human virus had spread. From the former Veltar mining worlds, we choose the human path. We choose freedom. From the rebellious Zephyrian cloud cities, the sky belongs to those who dare to fly. From the underwater cities of the Merdani, the ocean remembers when we swam free. Each message carried the same theme: species awakening to concepts the Council had spent millennia suppressing. Individual rights, democratic governance, and the radical idea that conquered peoples had the right to rule themselves. How is this possible? Demanded Counselor Vexthul, his crystalline form vibrating with fury. The humans are primitives. They've existed for barely a moment in galactic terms. How can their crude ideas destroy our perfect order? Defense Minister Krektul provided the answer with bitter honesty. Because we built our order on lies, Counselor. We told conquered species that resistance was futile, that submission was survival, that individual freedom was impossible. The humans proved every one of those lies wrong. The numbers were devastating. The Council's military, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, was now spread across hundreds of rebellion sites. Each day brought reports of destroyed bases, captured ships, and defecting officers. But the military losses were nothing compared to the economic collapse. The Council's entire system depended on tribute from conquered worlds, raw materials, manufactured goods, and technological innovations flowing constantly toward the core systems. Now that flow had not just stopped, it had reversed. The rebels are trading with each other, reported Economic Coordinator Plyanth. They've created their own currency based on the human model of free exchange. Worse, they're sharing technology and resources without Council oversight. Sharing technology? Ithgol was aghast. That's completely inefficient. It will lead to chaos and waste. Actually, Plyanth said reluctantly, their innovation rate has increased by 300%. When species share knowledge freely, instead of hoarding it for tribute, technological advancement accelerates dramatically. This was perhaps the most shocking revelation of all. The Council had always justified their control by claiming that centralized management was more efficient than chaotic freedom. But the rebelling species were proving the opposite. That free cooperation produced better results than forced submission. The human example was spreading in ways the Council had never anticipated. Democratic movements were appearing even on loyal worlds. Workers were forming unions. Citizens were demanding representation in government. Ancient concepts like voting and elections were being discussed openly for the first time in millennia. On Hegemony Prime, the Council's military headquarters, protests had broken out among their own support staff. Clerical workers, maintenance crews, and even some junior officers were demanding what they called basic rights. Our own people are being infected, reported Internal Security Chief Zandok. They're using human phrases like government by consent and power to the people. We've arrested over 10,000 citizens for seditious speech. Arrested our own citizens? Ithgol was stunned. The core worlds had been peaceful for so long that internal security was almost unknown. The detention centers are overflowing, and the arrests are creating more rebels. Every person we imprison has family and friends who now question our authority. The cascade was accelerating beyond anyone's ability to control. Each harsh response to rebellion created new rebels. Each show of force demonstrated weakness rather than strength. The Council was discovering what the humans had known from the beginning, that tyranny was ultimately unsustainable when people stopped believing in it. The breaking point came when the Council's own military began to fragment. Admiral Zarfon of the Fourth Fleet sent a message that sent shockwaves through the command center. I have reviewed the human broadcasts, his transmission began. I have studied their concept of individual rights and democratic governance. I find their arguments compelling. Therefore, I am withdrawing the Fourth Fleet from combat operations and offering our protection to any species seeking independence from Council rule. The message was devastating not just because of the ships lost, but because of what it represented. If their own officers were defecting, then the human ideas had penetrated to the very heart of Council power. How many others might follow? Ithgol asked desperately. Unknown, Zandok replied. We are monitoring all fleet communications, but the humans have taught everyone about encryption and secure channels. We can no longer be certain of anyone's loyalty. The final straw came from an unexpected source, intercepted human intelligence communications. The message was encoded, but Council cryptographers had broken it within hours. What they found inside changed everything. Target: Nexus Prime, the message read. Human deep cover operatives have successfully infiltrated Council core systems. Sabotage operations commence in 72 hours. Operation Goal: liberation of Council Central Archives and broadcast of suppressed historical records to all galactic species. The implications were staggering. Somehow human agents had reached the very center of Council power. They were planning to steal the archives, records that contained the true history of every conquered species, including details of atrocities the Council had hidden for millennia. How is this possible? Ithgol demanded. Nexus Prime is the most secure location in the galaxy. No one can reach us without clearance. Intelligence Chief Morgath provided the terrifying answer. The humans never sent agents, Counselor Prime. They didn't need to. They convinced our own people to become their agents. The truth was even worse than enemy infiltration. Council citizens, inspired by human broadcasts and democratic ideals, had chosen to betray their own government. Clerks, technicians, even security officers were working secretly to liberate information and spread it to rebel forces. The revolution was coming from within. Counselor Prime, an aide interrupted urgently. We're receiving a direct communication from the human leadership. President Vasquez wishes to speak with you personally. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of the woman who had started this galactic catastrophe with a simple refusal to submit. Helena Vasquez looked older than in the first transmission, her face marked by the stress of war, but her eyes still burned with determination. Counselor Prime Ithgol, she said calmly, I'm calling to offer you one chance to end this peacefully. You dare offer us terms? Ithgol sputtered. You are losing this war. Vasquez smiled grimly. Am I? Let me share some numbers with you. When this war began, the Council controlled 847 species. Today you control fewer than 200. Your military is in full retreat, your economy has collapsed, and your own people are rebelling against you. Temporary setbacks, Ithgol insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. The galaxy has learned something from us, Vasquez continued. We've shown them that tyranny only works when people believe it's inevitable. You built your empire on the lie that resistance was futile. We proved that lie wrong, and now everyone knows it. What do you want? Ithgol asked, finally abandoning pretense. The same thing we've always wanted. Freedom. Not just for humans, but for every species in the galaxy. The right to govern ourselves, to make our own choices, to live without fear of your punishment fleets. That's chaos, Ithgol protested. Without central authority, the galaxy will tear itself apart in wars and conflicts. Maybe, Vasquez admitted. Freedom is messy, dangerous, and sometimes painful. But it's better than the alternative. And from what we've seen these past months, free species cooperate better than enslaved ones. The transmission ended, leaving the Council leadership in stunned silence. Outside their fortress-like headquarters, protests had begun. Inside, their own staff whispered about human concepts like democracy and self-determination. Ithgol looked around the chamber that had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years. Half the seats were empty. Their occupants had fled to their home systems or simply disappeared. The remaining counselors looked frightened and uncertain. What are our options? He asked quietly. Defense Minister Krektul spread his hands helplessly. We can fight to the end and watch our civilization burn around us. We can negotiate a surrender and hope for mercy. Or what? Or we can try to learn from the great chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like it. For 2,000 years, this hall had been the center of galactic power, where representatives of conquered species came to receive orders and pay tribute. Now it was chaos. Counselor Prime Ithgol tried to maintain order from his high seat, but his voice was lost in the shouting. Representatives were walking out, declaring independence, and announcing new alliances with something called the Terran Federation. The carefully maintained hierarchy that had ruled the galaxy was collapsing in real time. Order, Ithgol shouted, his voice amplification system struggling against the noise. We must maintain order. Ambassador Pelthar of the Veltar mining world stood up slowly. His people had been slaves for 8 centuries, but his voice carried new strength. The Veltar Collective formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We reject your authority over our worlds and our people. A cheer went up from dozens of other representatives. The sound would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago. You cannot simply leave, protested Councillor Vexthul. The galaxy needs central authority. Without the Council, there will be wars, chaos, economic collapse. There already is war, replied Sky Leader Aerith of the Zephyrians, her feathered form magnificent in the chamber's lights. The war you brought to our worlds when you conquered us. The war you brought to the humans when they dared to refuse your ultimatum. And economic collapse? Laughed Deep Singer Moralny of the Merdani. You mean the collapse of your tribute system? Our worlds are more prosperous now than they've been in centuries. Free trade works better than forced extraction. Uithgol felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Just 2 years ago, he had ruled an empire of nearly 1,000 worlds. Today, fewer than 50 systems still acknowledged council authority, and even those were wavering. The final blow came when the chamber doors opened and a new delegation entered. At their head walked Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth, no longer the isolated leader of a primitive species, but the elected representative of something unprecedented in galactic history. I represent the Federation of Free Worlds, Vasquez announced, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet chamber. 423 species have joined together in voluntary alliance based on principles of mutual respect, democratic governance, and individual rights. 423? Ithgol's voice cracked. That's impossible. It's happening right now, Vasquez replied calmly. Every week, more species choose freedom over submission. The revolution you tried to stop by force has become something bigger than any of us imagined. She gestured to the representatives standing with her. Feltar miners stood beside Zephyrian sky dancers. Crystal beings from the Lithian worlds conversed with aquatic Merdani. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together based on shared principles. You see chaos, Vasquez continued. We see cooperation. You see the collapse of order. We see the birth of justice. You offered us slavery disguised as protection. We chose freedom despite the cost. Councillor Prime Yithgol looked around the chamber one last time. Half the seats were empty. Most of the remaining representatives were preparing to leave. The great map that had once shown council territory in proud blue now displayed a galaxy painted in the colors of independence. What happens to us? He asked quietly. To the species that created the council? Vasquez's expression softened slightly. That's up to you. The Federation isn't built on conquest or revenge. If the remaining council worlds want to join us as equals with democratic governments and respect for individual rights, you're welcome. If you prefer to remain independent, we'll respect that choice. And if we refuse, if we try to rebuild the old system, then you'll discover what the galaxy learned from watching humanity, Vasquez said firmly. That free peoples will never again submit to tyranny. The age of galactic empires is over. The formal dissolution began immediately. One by one, the remaining council representatives stood to announce their world's withdrawal. Some joined the Federation immediately. Others declared independence but requested trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. A few simply left without comment, returning to homeworlds that would have to find their own path forward. The hegemony delegation was among the last to speak. War Marshal Thexrin, the officer who had led the punishment fleet against humanity, stood slowly. His scaled face showed the exhaustion of someone who had fought an unwinnable war. The hegemony formally dissolves the Galactic Council, he announced. We acknowledge the failure of our governance model. Our worlds will require time to adapt to new concepts. Democratic concepts, Vasquez corrected gently. They're not new, Marshal. They're just new to galactic civilization. Most species practiced some form of self-governance before the Council conquered them. After the last representative had spoken, the chamber fell silent for the first time in hours. Ithgol looked down at the empty seats, the abandoned ceremonial symbols, the dark screens that had once displayed 1,000 conquered worlds. 2,000 years, he said to no one in particular. 2,000 years of galactic peace and order, ended by one species that refused to be reasonable. With respect, Councillor Prime, said Chief Archivist Memori, stepping forward with a data tablet. I have reviewed our complete historical records. The Council maintained order through force and fear, not peace. True peace requires consent, not conquest. Memori activated her tablet, projecting images throughout the chamber. These are records from before the Council's rise. Most species had democratic governments, free trade, and peaceful relations. Wars were rare and limited. Innovation was rapid. The galaxy was healthy. Then why did the Council succeed in conquering everyone? Arthgol asked. Because free societies are initially vulnerable to coordinated tyranny, Vasquez answered. Democracy requires trust and cooperation. Dictatorship only requires fear and force. In the short term, tyranny often wins. But in the long term, free peoples are stronger, more creative, and more resilient. The humans proved that, added Admiral Chen Wei, who had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. You attacked us expecting quick surrender. Instead, you got a war that lasted 2 years and cost you an empire. But the cost, Ithgol protested weakly. The chaos, the uncertainty. How can hundreds of independent governments function without central authority? Vasquez smiled. The same way they functioned for thousands of years before you conquered them. The same way Earth functioned with 200 independent nations before we achieved unity. Freedom is messy, but it works. The final session of the Galactic Council concluded with the signing of the Galactic Charter of Species Rights. The document, written primarily by human legal scholars with input from newly liberated species, established principles that would govern the new galactic order. The Charter's main points were revolutionary in their simplicity. Every intelligent species had the right to govern itself. No species could be forced to join any galactic organization. Free trade and voluntary cooperation would replace tribute and forced labor. Conflicts would be resolved through negotiation and arbitration, not conquest. All species had the right to their own technology, culture, and beliefs. As Vasquez signed the charter on behalf of the Federation of Free Worlds, she thought about the long journey from that first confrontation with Ambassador Zethkar to this moment of galactic transformation. You know, she said to Ithgol as the former council leader prepared to leave, if you had offered us partnership instead of subjugation, none of this would have been necessary. Ithgol paused at the chamber doors. Partnership with primitives? The council could never have accepted such a thing. That's exactly why the council fell, Vasquez replied. You thought conquest was strength and cooperation was weakness. The galaxy has learned the opposite is true. As the great chamber emptied for the final time, Ambassador Vasquez stood alone among the abandoned seats of galactic power. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from dozens of species departing for their homeworlds, carrying news of freedom to every corner of the galaxy. Her communicator chimed with a priority message from Earth. President Martinez, her successor, was calling with congratulations and questions about the new galactic order. How do we govern 400 species without becoming another council? He asked. Vasquez laughed. We don't govern them at all. That's the point. The Federation coordinates and facilitates, but each world governs itself. We learned something important these past 2 years. The best government is the one that governs least. As she prepared to leave the empty chamber, Vasquez recorded a final log entry. The Galactic Council is dissolved. In its place rises something unprecedented. A galaxy of free worlds united not by fear but by choice. Not by conquest, but by cooperation. The humans refused to bargain with tyranny, and in doing so, we gave the galaxy something it never knew it was missing. She paused, looking out at the stars where free worlds were beginning to chart their own destinies. We gave them hope. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic democracy had begun, and it had all started with 3 simple words spoken in defiance of overwhelming odds. We choose freedom. Years later, historians would mark the humans, Kree,